I want you to imagine a scenario for a second. Let's say you demand a single crucial document from the government.
Right.
You have a legal right to see it.
Yeah.
And the government finally agrees to comply.
Okay.
But instead of handing you that one document, a fleet of dump trucks pulls up to your house, unloads, and just buries your entire front lawn under 3.5 million pages of paper.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now, you have to ask yourself, is that transparency? Or is that, a smokescreen?
It's the illusion of transparency. I mean, when an institution drowns you in data like that, they aren't actually trying to inform you. They are actively utilizing volume as a weapon just to prevent you from finding the truth.
And that is the exact dynamic we are exploring today. Welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is unpacking the massive, and I mean highly controversial, early 2026 release of the Epstein Files.
It's a massive topic.
It really is. Back in November 2025, after this unprecedented political battle, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, or EFA, was signed into law. The mandate was clear. Open the vault. In response, the U.S. Department of Justice released millions of pages of documents, images, and videos.
And to actually make sense of this absolute mountain of data, we have assembled a very specific stack of sources for you today.
Yeah, let's go over those.
On one hand, we are looking at the official DOJ compliance letter that was signed by Attorney General Pam Bondi and Deputy AG Todd Blanche.
Right, the official narrative.
Exactly. But we're heavily cross-referencing that official narrative with independent analytical assessments that focus on a concept called managed transparency.
Managed transparency, I like that term.
It's crucial here. We also have a frankly devastating UN human rights report, along with congressional records and investigative reporting from outlets like CBS, Law Commentary, and The Guardian.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are going to try to cut through the millions of pages of noise to find out what was actually released, what is, mysteriously missing, and what this entire saga reveals about how the world's most powerful people protect their own.
It's a lot to get through.
It is. So let's start with the sheer math of this release, because honestly, the numbers themselves expose the strategy.
Yeah, they really do. So the defining moment of this whole process was January 30, 2026. That was the day the DOJ executed what they called their final major release under the Transparency Act, and the sheer volume is just staggering.
Put it into perspective for us.
We are talking about over 3 million pages of documents, plus 180,000 images, and about 2,000 videos.
Wow.
Yeah. And when you combine that with some of the earlier, smaller releases, the total hits nearly 3.5 million pages of data.
See, the DOJ points at that massive 3.5 million page pile on the front lawn and demands a gold star for transparency.
Exactly, yeah.
But internal records show their own identification process initially flagged over 6 million potentially responsive pages.
6 million.
6 million. So they released 3.5. Where did the other 3 million pages go?
That is the big question.
Right. Because if I ask you for a needle and you dump a haystack on me, I mean, you technically gave me the needle. But if you hold back half the haystack in a secret warehouse just in case, that isn't compliance?
No, it's not.
That's a cover-up masquerading as compliance.
Well, the DOJ's official defense for those missing 3 million pages is that they were merely, quote, duplicates, or just entirely non-responsive to the legal mandate.
Duplicates.
Yeah. In their compliance letter, they detail how more than 500 attorneys and reviewers worked on this. They claim they intentionally erred on the side of over-collecting data initially.
Okay.
And that those 500 attorneys carefully whittled it down to remove duplicate intra-agency files and redact sensitive victim information.
I mean, I struggle to buy the duplicate defense when we're talking about 3 million pages.
It's a huge number.
It reminds me of how big tech corporations use those 500-page terms and conditions agreements.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right. Like when you click I agree, Apple or Google has technically disclosed everything to you. It's legal disclosure.
Yeah.
But it's functionally designed to overwhelm you so you don't actually read what you're agreeing to.
And that is the core of the independent analytical assessment we are using today. They explicitly call this tactic a controlled dump.
A controlled dump. Explain that for the listener.
A controlled dump is a very specific, highly orchestrated crisis management strategy. The goal is to release high-volume, low-insight data.
So burying the good stuff.
Exactly. Imagine giving the public thousands of pages of old news clippings, previously public court transcripts, and mundane logistical emails about fixing a leaky faucet on a private island.
Right, just pure noise.
Yeah. By doing that, you technically comply with the law, but you successfully bury the critical evidence. You exhaust the journalists, the researchers, and the public.
You burn out the investigative energy.
Right.
Which honestly makes total sense when you consider the political tug of war behind these files.
Oh, absolutely.
Because the narrative around this data was rapidly spinning out of control at the highest levels of government. The expectations for this release weren't just high. They were pushed to the stratosphere by the administration itself.
Yes, they were.
Let's rewind to February 2025. Attorney General Pam Bondi goes on national television and claims that the Epstein client list was, quote, sitting on my desk right now to review.
Which was a massive statement. And to be clear for you listening, as we trace this timeline, we're looking strictly at the mechanics of this data release.
Right, exactly.
Our sources highlight highly questionable, politically charged actions from both the Trump administration and Democratic lawmakers.
Yes, we are not taking sides here.
Not at all. Our focus isn't to take a political side or endorse any specific viewpoint. We're simply following the data, remaining entirely impartial, and seeing how this information was handled at the highest levels of power.
We followed the paper trail.
Yeah.
So we had the Attorney General in February saying the list is sitting right on her desk.
Yeah.
But then the narrative just completely flips.
It does. By July 2025, the Justice Department and the FBI release a 2-page memo that flatly contradicts the Attorney General's earlier claim.
Wait, a complete contradiction?
A complete contradiction. This official memo stated that after an exhaustive review, there was no incriminating client list.
Wow.
It also stated there was no credible evidence found that Epstein blackmailed prominent individuals.
Wait, so I have the list on my desk. Turns into the list does not exist in a matter of months.
Oh, basically, yes.
That is a massive flip-flop. I mean, it's no wonder that caused a tremendous bipartisan backlash in Congress.
It ignited an absolute firestorm, and that led directly to the push for the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
The EFTA.
Right. Now, initially, President Trump resisted this push. According to the reporting, after being briefed in May 2025 that his own name appeared in the files alongside unverified hearsay, he called the push for the files a Democrat hoax.
Okay.
But the momentum in Congress became unstoppable. It was a bipartisan coalition led by Democratic Representative Ro Khanna and Republican Representative Thomas Massie.
An unusual pairing.
Very. And they forced what is called a discharge petition.
Now, for anyone listening who doesn't watch C-SPAN every day, a discharge petition is basically a parliamentary mutiny.
It really is.
It's a rare move that allows a majority of the House to yank a bill out of committee and force a vote on the floor. It completely bypasses the party leadership who might be trying to, kill it.
That's exactly what it is. And it worked. The House passed the EFTA 427-1. The Senate passed it unanimously.
Wow, unanimously.
Yeah, and President Trump ultimately reversed his course and signed it into law in November 2025.
I want to go back to that July DOJ memo for a second.
Okay.
The one that claimed there was no list.
Sure.
If there is no official, literal client list, does that mean there was no network? Or is the Justice Department just using a really clever semantic defense?
What do you mean?
Well, we searched the hard drives and there was no single Excel spreadsheet named blackmaillist.xlsx, so we don't have to talk about the vast directory of associates scattered across 3.5 million pages.
Ah, I see. Well, the analytical assessment strongly suggests it is entirely a semantic defense.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. By denying a specific list, the institution avoids talking about the decentralized directory of powerful contacts. The files contain massive contact books, flight logs, and correspondence.
So the evidence is there.
The network is clearly there, even if it wasn't conveniently formatted as a single checklist with a bow on it.
Right. Which brings us to the actual redactions.
Yeah.
Because the EFTA forces the government's hand. The files have to come out.
Yes.
And the law explicitly stated that the DOJ could not withhold records to protect people from, quote, embarrassment or reputational harm.
That was a key part of the law.
But the hypocrisy of that mandate becomes obvious when you look at who actually got the benefit of the doubt during the redaction process.
What's fascinating here is the sheer disparity in how the redaction protocols were applied.
Yeah, tell me about it.
You have the DOJ claiming they need 500 attorneys to carefully protect victims, but the execution protected the elite while actively endangering the vulnerable.
Let's look at the elite first. Representatives Khanna and Massie actually visited a secure DOJ, Annex SCOF, to view the unredacted files.
Right, behind closed doors.
Exactly. And they found that the DOJ had blacked out the names of 6 highly powerful men in the public files for what Khanna called no apparent reason.
Just completely redacted.
Yes, one of them was billionaire Leslie Wexner. He's the former CEO of the company that owns Victoria's Secret.
Okay.
Wexner hired Epstein to manage his money. But the crucial detail here is that in a 2019 FBI document, Wexner was actually labeled a co-conspirator.
A co-conspirator, and yet his name is hidden.
Yet his name was hidden in the public release. Another hidden name was Sultan Ahmed bin Sulayem, the CEO of DP World.
Right.
The files show he exchanged graphic emails with Epstein, including one where Epstein referenced a torture video.
Now, in the interest of full context, the DOJ did offer a defense for these redactions.
What was it?
Deputy AG Todd Blanche stated that some of the 6 men Khanna named had absolutely nothing to do with Epstein. He claimed they were simply random people whose photos had been used in an old FBI photo lineup years ago.
I mean, I hear that defense, but it completely falls apart when you look at the specifics.
So.
A random guy in a photo lineup is one thing. Hiding a billionaire who the FBI literally labeled a co-conspirator, or a CEO sending graphic emails to the center of a trafficking ring.
Yeah, those aren't just random bystanders.
That is something else entirely. The DOJ seemed to be working overtime to protect this inner circle.
Yeah.
But how did they treat the actual victims?
It was a catastrophic failure. The government didn't just fail to protect them. In many ways, they exposed them further.
This part is just unbelievable to me.
Independent media and researchers quickly realized that in the initial December 2025 release, you could bypass the digital blackouts on the PDFs using basic copy-paste functions.
I need to stop you there because that is mind-blowing.
It really is.
For listeners who don't work in digital archiving, a PDF isn't a flat photograph. It's built in layers. The text is one layer, and the black redaction box is just a separate graphic layered on top. If you don't flatten or merge the file, anyone can just click the text layer beneath the box, copy it, and paste it into a Word doc.
Anyone with zero hacking skills.
Are you telling me 500 attorneys didn't know how to flatten a PDF?
That is exactly what happened. It was a literal copy-paste error hiding some of the darkest secrets of this investigation.
That is absurd.
And it gets worse. Unredacted driver's licenses were published.
Just kidding?
No. For instance, the files fully expose the driver's license and home address of Anuska de Giorgio. She was a victim who had bravely testified against Ghislaine Maxwell.
Oh, that's horrible.
Names of victims who had never been publicly linked to the case before were suddenly exposed, sometimes appearing over 100 times in the searchable text.
See, this goes beyond a technical glitch. It's structural negligence.
Absolutely.
The United Nations human rights experts actually got involved over this. They released a blistering statement calling this process institutional gaslighting.
They did. The UN experts pointed out that while powerful men were being meticulously shielded by these supposed errors, the survivors were being re-traumatized.
Yeah.
They were exposed to potential retaliation and immense stigma. The UN essentially said that this level of systematic abuse, shielded by institutional corruption, may actually meet the legal threshold for crimes against humanity.
Wow. Crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because if the Justice Department, and by extension the broader government apparatus, is going to such extraordinary lengths to manage this transparency, to build this maze, what are they truly trying to hide?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because the sources indicate this goes far beyond a single horrific sex trafficking ring. We're talking about geopolitics.
The files contain bombshells that move this entire narrative from a domestic criminal case into the realm of international espionage and global finance.
Give us an example.
Well, for example, buried in the release is a heavily redacted 69-page memo from the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration.
Let's pause on that. Why is the DEA investigating Jeffrey Epstein?
Right. The memo details a massive 5-year probe into Epstein and 14 other individuals for suspicious money transfers that were potentially linked to narcotics.
Narcotics. And those 14 other names.
Heavily redacted, of course.
Of course. And there are also allegations regarding international arms dealing. The files corroborate claims made by a former Epstein associate named Stephen Hoffenberg.
Right, the arms allegations.
Yeah, he alleged that back in the 1980s, Epstein was heavily involved in brokering arms sales to Iran. And he was allegedly doing this via a Chinese state-owned defense company called Norinco.
See, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it completely shifts our understanding of who Jeffrey Epstein was.
It changes everything.
Lawmakers and political analysts have actually started using a specific term for this. They call it the Epstein class.
The Epstein class. What exactly defines that?
It describes a transnational capitalist elite. These are individuals who operate across borders, moving immense amounts of capital and doing so with near total impunity from national laws.
Okay, so they're untouchable.
Essentially, yes. The sources, the DEA memos, the international arms allegations, the connections to global logistics CEOs, they all suggest that Epstein wasn't just a rogue, wealthy financier with a dark secret.
Right.
He was a geopolitical asset. He was brokering intelligence, moving money, and compromising powerful figures for various global interests.
That reframes everything. I mean, we've been looking at this for years as a true crime story about a predator and a secret client list.
Yeah.
But is it actually a story about an international financial and intelligence apparatus that used blackmail as its collateral?
Exactly.
Let's talk about how that actually works in the intelligence world. It's called compromat, right?
Yeah.
Compromising material.
Precisely. Compromat. In the realm of global finance and espionage, mutually assured destruction via blackmail isn't a byproduct of the system. It is a feature.
It's the currency.
It acts as a perverse form of trust between bad actors. If I have video evidence of you committing a heinous crime, and you have evidence of me laundering narcotics money...
Then we're safe.
Exactly. We can now do business together because we hold each other's lives in our hands.
It's the ultimate insurance policy.
It is.
So if Epstein is an asset moving money for narcotics and weapons, the trafficking ring isn't just a horrific series of crimes. It's a mechanism for capturing and controlling other powerful people within that Epstein class.
Yes.
It's basically an intelligence-gathering operation disguised as a VIP party.
And that is the exact thesis of the analytical assessment we are reviewing. It explains why the DOJ, regardless of which administration is in charge, might feel compelled to execute a controlled dump.
Because the truth is too dangerous.
Right. Because an uncontrolled, fully unredacted release wouldn't just embarrass politicians, it would threaten the structural secrets of intelligence and financial institutions globally.
The whole house of cards comes down.
Unraveling Epstein means unraveling the mechanisms of leverage that intelligence agencies rely on.
So what does this all mean?
Let's synthesize what we've learned from this deep dive. The Epstein Files Transparency Act, driven by immense public pressure and a rare parliamentary mutiny in Congress, successfully forced the government's hand.
Which was a huge win initially.
It was. It resulted in the release of roughly 3.5 million pages of data.
But that victory for transparency was heavily compromised from the start.
Highly compromised. The institution engaged in a textbook-controlled dump. They flooded the zone with low-value logistical data while withholding 3 million pages they deemed duplicates.
And some things just vanished completely.
Right. Crucial documents were mysteriously missing. For example, the independent analysts noted a glaring lack of FBI 302 memos.
And for context, an FBI 302 is the official form federal agents use to summarize an interview. It's the raw human intelligence of an investigation.
All right.
And you're saying those were largely absent.
Largely absent. And the redaction process itself was a catastrophic paradox. It utilized basic technological failures, like not flattening a PDF layer that exposed the personal data and home addresses of vulnerable victims.
Which is just tragic.
It is. And simultaneously, they applied aggressive legal privileges to hide the identities of the powerful inner circle and international billionaires. They were forced to open the door, but they built an intricate, exhausting maze right behind it.
Which brings us back to that pile of paper on the front lawn. I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over today.
Yeah.
Think about the sheer weight of the forces that aligned here. You had a unanimous, bipartisan mandate from the United States Congress.
Unheard of.
Right. You had relentless scrutiny from the global media, blistering formal condemnation from the United Nations. And yet, even with all of that immense pressure, the result was still a managed truth.
A controlled outcome.
We ended up with this scenario where the vulnerable survivors are publicly exposed, but the architects of these global financial and intelligence networks remain perfectly hidden in the margins of those 3.5 million pages.
It's sobering.
It forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question about the limits of national law. How do you hold an entire class of people accountable when they are the ones who ultimately hold the keys to the archives?
Exactly.
If the Epstein class controls the redaction pen, can a law ever truly force them into the light? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep reading the fine print and keep questioning the information you are given.